You may have heard the news about a recent report released regarding the Southern Baptist Convention. The substance of the report is that the Executive Committee of the Convention actively worked to discourage, downplay, and even deny reports of sexual abuse in Southern Baptist churches. As the largest Protestant denomination in America, this revelation may cause many to abandon church and give some a reason not to attend. I am Dave Chambers, the pastor of Manistique Bible Church. I am a Baptist myself, but I am not a Southern Baptist. I have long had disagreements with the Southern Baptist Convention. I have also appreciated the work and teachings of several prominent Southern Baptists. My goal is not to defend the Southern Baptist Convention. I do not have any authority to speak on behalf of them, nor do I know any more about this situation than can be learned from the published reports. You can find the entire report online. It seems to be thorough and well done, and I encourage you to read it for yourself. I'm speaking to this matter as an interested outsider. My primary concern is to answer some questions about how to think about Christianity in light of these terrible revelations. First, all Christians should be clear that the actions of those who disregarded the reports of sexual abuse are reprehensible. Those are not the actions of a godly man. The actions of those men is sin. It is contrary to everything the Bible teaches about pastoral care and Christian love. Abuse of church members and the self-serving decisions of certain members of the Southern Baptist Convention's leadership are entirely contrary to all that Christ said the church and its leaders are to be. Let me say this very clearly. A church that allows predators to remain in its midst is absolutely not a Christian church. And the wicked actions of the Executive Committee has given an opportunity to the enemies of God to blaspheme. And tragically, many will use the decisions of those men as a reason to deny Christ, reject the church, and refuse the gospel. The actions of those responsible for those tragic decisions have brought shame on the church and have severely hindered the cause of Christ. However, the actions of those men is not an accurate reflection of the behavior of all churches or even all Southern Baptist churches. It is worth noting that the push to start this investigation came from within the Southern Baptist Convention. Its own members demanded this information be made public. I dare say the majority of Southern Baptists are as appalled by these events as those outside the convention. The report produced by the group tasked with investigating these matters, they said currently over 47,000 Baptist churches in the United States cooperate with the Southern Baptist Convention. In total, the SBC network of churches encompasses over 14 million persons. The Houston Chronicle reported that in the past 20 years, about 380 Southern Baptist church leaders and volunteers have faced allegations of sexual misconduct, leaving behind more than 700 victims. Those numbers are tragic, but they also indicate that the percentage of sexually abusive church leaders is far less than 0.1% of the total number of church leaders and volunteers in the Southern Baptist Convention. There are far too many abusers in the church, but this report clearly shows that the great majority of churches are not hiding predators. You also need to know that no one gets away with anything. Men may try to cover up sin, but Jesus sees and knows His church. Jesus responds to those things done to His church as if they were done to Himself. Jesus told Saul of Tarsus that the persecution he inflicted on the church was inflicted on Jesus Himself. And Jesus will absolutely not allow a single predator or a single act of abuse to go unpunished. Jesus does not minimize it, justify it, cover it up, or excuse it. Jesus considers the mistreatment of the least of His children to be a serious issue worthy of the most severe punishment. Jesus Himself said it is better for a man to have a millstone tied onto his neck and then be thrown into the sea than to injure one of the children of God. Every single act of abuse and every act of cover-up will receive the full judgment for its wickedness and for the harm it did to the children of God. Not one sin, whether named in this report or not, will ever escape God's wrath. Tragically, though, we should not be surprised that evil men will rise to positions of leadership in the church. The New Testament is full of warnings about this very fact. The book of 2 Corinthians warns that false teachers will masquerade as men of God, and they will persuade many of their godliness, because even Satan himself appears as an angel of light. In the book of 2 Peter, we are warned that false teachers will infiltrate the church. They will use the church as a means to gratify their own lust, including their depraved sexual appetites. In Acts 20, we are warned that wolves will rise up in the church from among those in positions of leadership. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus told a parable warning us that Satan would spread false Christians in the church. The devil is actively working to destroy the church. His efforts include planting false teachers and selfish predators in the church to hinder its work and undermine its testimony. What has happened in the Southern Baptist Convention is terrible, and the men responsible are tools of Satan. However, we should not be surprised. We do not justify it, but we should not be surprised because the church has a powerful enemy who never stops his attacks. Despite the wickedness of men and the assaults of Satan, this report does not spell the end of the Christian church. No one should fear that Christianity is going to die. Jesus promised that He would build His church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. No matter what happens, biblical Christianity will survive. The gospel will continue to go forward. People will continue to be saved. Churches will continue to gather under the loving shepherding of godly pastors and the gracious service of Spirit-filled deacons. The powerful enemies of the church and the malice of false teachers is not a reason to abandon the church. I know many have been hurt by churches, but the problems of a church will never be solved by abandoning it. Instead, these problems are a reminder of the need to be constantly vigilant. The New Testament requires that pastors be men of sterling character. And so each church must be always on guard, must be always careful to ensure that its leaders are godly men. Likewise, Christians need to be careful to attend a godly church with godly leaders. Christians need to know that their pastor is truly a godly man. Do not attend a church just because the pastor is a celebrity or he preaches an entertaining sermon. Go to the church because the pastor is truly a man of God whose character and life are worthy of imitation. If you're at a church led by ungodly pastors who refuse to change, go somewhere else. But don't stop going to church just because some Christians have behaved badly. Don't blame Christianity and the gospel for the sinful actions of perverts and predators. Keep going to church. Go to church because that is the place God has given for His children to grow, be taught, and be equipped to serve Him. Find a church where the pastor is godly, the leaders are Spirit-filled, the Bible is preached, and the commands of God are obeyed. And thank you for watching. If you have more questions, you can find answers at everlastingtruths.com. Tune in again next week for more Bible answers to your questions.